Hey, welcome to another empowering episode of Strive 365, your go-to source for conquering life's challenges and thriving no matter the odds. Whether you're seeking mental, physical, emotional, spiritual growth, we're here to help guide you towards a better life. And I'm your host, Justen Arnold, coming from the amazing Rockvox studio. In today's episode, we welcome Jason Ratcliffe. He's a multi-award-winning entrepreneur, RICS surveyor, and an advocate for sustainable living. Residing in the picturesque Cornwall, England, Jason's work focuses on harmonizing humanity's lifestyle with the planet, particularly through sustainable building practices. His innovative project, the Element Cube, is revolutionizing thermal efficiency in buildings, marking a significant step towards environmentally conscious architecture. So without further ado, let's welcome Jason Ratcliffe to the Strive 365 podcast. Jason, thanks for joining us and being willing to share your insights and experiences with our listeners. So go and introduce yourself to the people of Strive 365.
Absolutely, and thank you so much for having me on. I can't really top that introduction. I think that was pretty great, to be honest. Yeah, I mean, it's exactly that. It started off with a little interest in the industry and I suppose a concern for general well-being and health, especially around home environments and how that can suddenly have an effect on people's health without really medical explanation or research. And that's really where it kicked off, I suppose. And then from there, I've kind of just progressed my journey through multiple different channels, and yeah, and that's where I am today, really.
That's pretty cool. There's something that ignited that passion to want to do this, because for me and a lot of people that are probably listening that have some passion project or a reason they go towards something or start something, there's something usually or a few things that might ignite that. Was there anything like that?
Absolutely. So I think from a personal perspective, I've got two young children at home, and it was getting to the point for myself and my family that multiple unexplained health issues kind of occurred, such as kind of random sporadic patterns of sleep, aggravation in certain things, asthma onset, and there was no real explanation for these things. And the doctors would kind of be saying, "Oh, these can just be generic or inherent within your family," but it just wasn't the case. It wasn't adding up for me, and these things kind of were occurring more and more around the people that I loved, and friends and family as well. So, I was already in the industry. I was already a property surveyor. And my clients were also kind of coming up with the same types of issues, but they just never were addressed ever. And it was just quite frustrating for everyone involved, and insurance claims and things kind of came back saying, "Oh, it's just the way you're living. You need to kind of eat more fruit and veg, get more sleep," this kind of stuff, which is obviously important, but not the cause for this. So that was my spark. But I think the frustration that nothing was being done, and that so there needed to be a voice of, I suppose, of reason and I suppose stability for these people to actually say, well, hold on, how can we actually address this and what is going on? So yeah, I think that definitely was the reason it was sparked to me. Absolutely.
I love that, and I can resonate with that even from pretty much any project or career or business or thing that I've started has come like from a place of potentially frustration, but also just, it sounds like you didn't use this, but finding the root, like not just taking things at the surface level, not just saying, oh, you need fresh air, oh, you need a doctor, oh, maybe you take this medicine, maybe if you eat these foods. I think it's accumulation of a lot of things, but even with the short glimpse into my health and wellness business, most, if not all my clients by this point and the people I work with are finding the root cause. I'm a strength and conditioning coach. A lot of people here in America, it's mainly like weight loss. And then you might have like bodybuilding, CrossFit. Mine is getting people to just essentially move better and feel better. I get a lot of post-physical therapy, and it's because it's not just, trying to help them with the pain point, but finding the root cause and why that's happening. So I love that. So this podcast is definitely, like we said at the beginning, and I love, because so many people are going through adversity, especially more than ever. Can you share any adversity, whether it be in your life or your business, that's influenced your path towards, the things that you're working on, sustainable building, life, health and wellness?
Yeah, absolutely. So my very small part of England which is known as Cornwall. Is very coastal. It's very picturesque and almost kind of frozen in time, some people might say. I think there's a lot of commercialization coming down and in causing kind of profit over sustainability, trying to force through planning. People trying to encroach on some natural heritage sites and beaches and things like that, where it's just preposterous. It's ridiculous that these things are even considered. So that, from me and for the local community, was very frustrating. And then kind of going on from a personal perspective, I was doing everything that obviously you're supposed to do in the sense of health-wise, getting 8 hours sleep, making sure you're exercising as much as you can, eating healthily, even down to kind of just your general well-being. But what I wasn't taking into account was the levels of stress. What can stress do for you? What can anxiety, high levels, high frequency all the time, 7 days a week. And that then was a direct result in my health decline as well. So all of these things, kind of this feeling of helplessness, where you were seeing the I suppose, environment around me kind of almost collapsing into just a profit commercialized conglomerate that was just kind of bulldozing its way through nature. But then also from my own self wellness, that, actually I was kind of almost killing myself by caring about it, but too much without actually trying to refill my own cup to be able to then kind of do something actually practical about it. So yeah, I'm now luckily at the tail end of that recovery process, but it's been very difficult and a massive steep learning curve for sure.
Man, that's good to hear. Are there things that you implemented into your own environment and your own home first or initially during this process? Because you said it sounds like you're on the up and up, which is awesome. Share with maybe something that even somebody could do today that you did in your own, or look for, or, what should people be looking for? So,
absolutely. And I think my main lesson I've learned from my own personal experience is, it's absolutely fantastic to be passionate about what you do. It's absolutely vital. Obviously, if you hate what you do, or you change it. It's definitely something you need. It's easier said than done, obviously. But if you can, take a step back and change what you do. But really look at what that kind of pie chart, I suppose, look at it from a perspective of how much are you giving others? How much are you giving to what you care about rather than yourself? Because I think because you, especially myself, I'm so kind of a believer in kind of giving your all and really trying to make things happen. And I know from reading your book as well that, me and you sound very much alike.
Really?
In that. It's a fantastic book, by the way.
Oh, you read it. That's good to hear. Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
So basically it's to do with putting yourself first, even when it's difficult to do and you don't feel like it's doing the justice to your own cause or your own beliefs, because without that, you end up nothing. You burn out, you have serious medical history or things come into your life. And then for the rest of your kind of existence on this planet, essentially, you're almost no good to anyone. So therefore, you kind of lose that battle by kind of being consumed. So that's definitely something I've learned. And I would strongly suggest other people consider as well.
So have you always lived in Cornwall, or did you move there because of its beauty and picturesqueness? And if so, how has that unique environment shaped your perspective on resilience, growth, professionally, personally?
Yeah, absolutely. So no, I'm not Cornish. I'm actually from a town called Woking, which is about half an hour from London. Most of my family live up that way. Yeah, London in England, yeah. And so it's very fast track. I did most of my academic learning up there. And then I came down to Cornwall because I was brought down at a youngish age. And then sort of by about 21, I moved down here permanently and started a family with my now wife, because it was just the environment that I wanted to raise a family in. It was safe, it's great outdoor space, a lot of oxygen in the air, very little pollutants, very little crime. So it was just kind of the ideal place. And I think as well, the way my brain works is I'm learning all the time about kind of my own kind of, I suppose, how everything functions and how I need to deal with things myself. But from a career perspective, from a professional perspective, I'm very focused, and I find it very hard to wind down. So kind of Cornwall is that place of tranquility where even a 20-minute walk at lunchtime across a beach, you know, that allows me to then just zone back in and kind of refocus and get myself balanced again, especially from a well-being perspective. So it's almost my saving point being in Cornwall.
Man, you talked it up, man. I'll have to check it. No, it sounds very gorgeous. And I looked at some pictures before this, and a question that comes to my mind, because, you know, for me, I like for here. So give you reference. We live in Rochester, New York, very urban, not too far from like a Buffalo, you know, it's a smaller, you probably haven't been here, but you're familiar like in New York City. It's small in New York City, but think, you know, over 1 million people, very urban, very city. And I love escaping to what's called the Adirondacks, which is a lot of mountains, waterfalls, nature, which isn't too, like, you know, a few hours from here. But the one thing I like about being in here, at least keeps me connected to some of it. Do you ever feel, I guess the question I'm trying to ask is, do you ever feel disconnected from those environments, especially probably knowing that those need just as much, if not more help of the things that you're discussing and talking about?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's very much a battle between kind of human evolution and progress and sustainability for nature. Where Cornwall, for example, the road infrastructure has been suffering for decades, and it just hasn't coped with the traffic. And obviously, it's very tourist central, which is completely justified in the sense that everybody would love to come down, especially, you know, cutting costs. Unfortunately, dare I say it, with the COVID era as well, and coming out the tail end. But so the necessity for kind of human progress and that infrastructure is obviously justified. But then you have to look at the destruction and additional damage and limited preservation to nature. So things, the great thing is with my firm and my various kind of companies and projects is I very heavily reinvest into sort of reducing carbonisation, reforestation programs, looking at not just financially, but time-wise, actually getting involved, getting blog post content out, kind of encouraging people to engage, go in the outdoors. And a lot of my research as well is to do not just with well-being of people, but with the kind of harmonisation of how construction and buildings can, I suppose, exist and grow to meet the population demands, but also to reduce the amount of damage on the planet as well. So we can leave it in a better position, hopefully, than we've obviously arrived in.
I mean, obviously UK is different than America, but that's got to be challenging. There's got to be pushback. I mean, do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, 100%. So, you know, like I've said previously, profit speaks, money talks. There's always ways as to why things are pushed through when, you know, ethically they may not be, I suppose, acceptable. But at the same time, I think people's moral compass and the general population, due to exposure to things, you know, like global warming and these freak storms and weather and things. I mean, it happens globally, and we obviously see it like everybody else. We don't get hurricanes and earthquakes and things, luckily, but, you know, there is enough out there to make people wake up and go, this, you know, this isn't just a hoax. This isn't just something we've been talking about now, becoming white noise. And it's kind of becoming almost the moral norm or mandatory for local businesses and big conglomerate corporates to be able to say, well, we need to take action. And if we don't take action, our profits are actually going to be significantly reduced, because the general population speaks for themselves. You know, if you've got somebody who's a large food chain but isn't economically conscious, you know, their customers will go elsewhere. And same with the smaller kind of local businesses as well. So in actual fact, yes, profit still remains the ultimate kind of driving force behind it, but the general public's kind of overall, I suppose, position on it is kind of forcing companies to take action in a more ethical way.
I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, it sounds like you're saying we need to put people over profits. And when you do, the profits will do just fine, or if not well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And that's exactly it. Not just from a personal perspective, but from a public and I suppose, your own responsibility as a business owner, to be able to say, look, I'm doing my bit. No one person can fix this problem we have. It's an impossibility, but everyone can do their bit. And by doing that, then, profits will go up. Sustainability and retainability of customers as well will actually follow the suit. It will carry on.
So this is so cool, this conversation so far, because this is definitely Strive 365, and it's something we haven't really done. And talking about construction and buildings and the health and wellness of that and how it affects us. This is so interesting. And one of the things that I read and that you talk about is the element cube. For one, I want you to explain what that is, and then also in developing it, what were some of the personal challenges you face and how did you overcome them?
Yeah, so that's really interesting, actually, because my PhD is on dynamic strategies to thermally improve buildings. I'm very, because I'm a surveyor by trade, I'm in a lot of homes and a lot of houses and constructions, commercial and residential. Our building regulations are kind of almost prehistoric a little bit. They're outdated to actual practical application in the sense of thermal efficiency of buildings. They are very much universal and don't necessarily take into account the special characteristics of buildings, because in the UK, we've got such a diverse range of constructions, from solid stone and cob, which is essentially rammed earth mud, to cavity wall constructions and timber frames. So there's all different types, but to pass building regulations nowadays, there's just a generic kind of calculation and what's called watts per meter squared Kelvin, which essentially is how much heat is being able to transfer out of an element of the building. Now, as part of my PhD, is very much looking at each building and how it can, I suppose, a universal building regulation standard can be updated so that more can be accommodated and thought through for both kind of construction types and the orientation of a building. So, it's not a one-size-fits-all. So leading from that, I needed what's called a climate chamber. So essentially a cubic meter, or it could be 5 cubic meters, whatever it is that you require to have a complete controlled environment within a building. And there was nothing commercially available at the time, and there still isn't. And the ones that were being undertaken for research projects were huge, clumpy things that you couldn't just put in the back of a car and take as a single researcher. They were too heavy and they wouldn't work on a development or a construction site. So it kind of led to me having to look at it and go, well, what do I need for my research? How can I adapt something that doesn't exist? So that's where the elemental cube came in. Where essentially it's a cube with an open face, which can quite easily be put together, put onto a wall structure or a surface, and it allows you to then regulate that temperature so the ISO standards can be sort of met. So because, without going into too much detail about it, you need 5-degree difference between internal and external air at any time for U values. It's very difficult to obtain that, especially in bigger buildings, without kind of running high energy costs. So essentially, this then allows you to do quite accurate but dynamic thermal efficiency testing in buildings with a single user. So it's currently going through prototype phases, and the patents now have gone through. So it's now going through its final stages of then being available commercially. So we're going to make it as cheap as possible it's not profit orientated at all. We just want to make it available for as many researchers, organizations as possible to be able to undertake their own research, so that this can not just be a UK resolve, it can be an international resolve, because obviously every country has its own geographic problems, climate, temperature, air pressure, all sorts of things, as well as general kind of the way we behave inside our social environments. So that's really what this is for. So yeah, it's quite exciting stuff.
This is and it sounds like it, and I appreciate you explaining it. So the work that you're doing, and you're talking about patenting it, but the work in general, that everything you've talked about so far, is there anything like it going on in anywhere else in the world that you know of?
No, there are segments of bits of research dipping in, because obviously it's a huge important topic, and there are areas of now massive exposure due to medical researchers actually then linking things like poor air quality in indoor air environments or indoor sort of environments to long-term medical health, where we've got people being rushed to hospital. We've got sort of bronchitis, upper airway infections, fatigue, depression, anxiety, asthmas, all these things that can just come out of absolutely nowhere because of even short-term exposure to a poor indoor air quality. So the legislation within the UK is definitely kind of cracking down on these, but there is still no adequate resolve. There is still no kind of, I suppose, people's resolution or support back and adequately go in and say, this is what you need to do. So as part of this whole kind of project to move forward, a brand called the Home Health Expert is now being launched, which does exactly that. And it's a completely free podcast, which is going to be, I basically interview industry professionals and medical experts and kind of challenge them on those things and just kind of get the real answers without kind of going through potential, influenced media outlets and things like that.
I would love to talk to some of those medical experts in this, because this I find interesting, but it also made me think, because of conversation I've been having in other areas, and just any area, is getting people to care. Are you finding that happening? Because especially now more than ever, and as we're so connected yet disconnected, as we're busier, even though we shouldn't be, that people just don't have the time nor the patience, nor just, we're so disconnected from the human nature. And this is within my life coaching and health coaching that I see. So are you having a struggle with that? Are you seeing this? Are you seeing people jump on board? Talk on this, especially since I know you're in the life coaching field as well.
That's a really good question. So there are those people that are resistant. We've got people that are landlords which are seeing property as investment only, so it's more of a monetary return rather than an ethical or moral return. And also kind of the legislation and taxes that are being put in place to make it less lucrative or enticing for landlords. So therefore, they're not wanting to put the money or investment back into the properties because there is just no kind of profit margin there to do so. However, there are, there's over 1 million properties owned kind of within the UK at the moment where they're actually classed as below acceptable habitable standards. And of those, you've got private tenants, council tenants.
You say over 1 million?
So homeowners are learning that this is affecting, obviously, their resale value, but also their own health. And if you've got a lot of health conscious people, which, people, regardless of anything else or planetary protection or anything else, self-preservation, and if you've got young family members or older generations living with you and you see them kind of having these health issues, that internally motivates people to want to find a solution for these things. So I'm finding a lot of people now kind of searching for the answers because they want to live in a healthier environment. And I think it is coming full circle in the sense that now there's more exposure of these. Now there's more evidence of medical kind of links to this type of impact. People are now wanting answers, and there just simply isn't any out there. This is where, again, the Home Health Expert kind of podcast really kind of come to its own.
Yeah, well, that's incredible. We'll have to leave that in the show notes, and we'll do that for you. And so, like, sustainability, which we've been talking about, often requires obviously challenging status quo, which you've talked about. Is there a time where you can share that you had to stand firm in your beliefs despite maybe optimism or opposition or skepticism?
Yeah, absolutely. I think when you're looking at developers or private clients that are looking for project development or improvements to their property, the go-to currently is obviously more synthetic or petrochemical installations, such as PIR installations, mineral walls, things like that. They can be very harmful, not just in application or fitting, but in manufacturing and the manufacturing process, people working in these factories, the pollution and waste from these factories, they've been going into rivers and things like that. And then obviously then being fit and even disturbing. So homeowners maybe kind of going and using their roof voids as storage areas or maintenance, disturbing, say, mineral wool insulation. It then gets inhaled and it becomes very irritated. So the problem is with these, they're cheaper, they're easily accessible, and a lot of contractors push it because that's what they are aware of. They know the thermal performance, they know they're cost effective. So trying to get more practical data for more sort of sustainable and natural solutions, such as corkboard insulation, sheep's wool, hemp's wool, things like that, is a massive kind of movement, which is still kind of very slow to be churning over. So, and they are a little bit more expensive still, because obviously the demand for them is not high enough to make them kind of the economies of scale kind of grow to make them viable in that sense. So I think there's a two-pronged approach really to try and overcome that. It's more educating both contractors and homeowners, but it's also then trying to make it more economically viable to access these, and also it even gets to the finer detail of, if you're using sheep's wool, for example, people naturally go, oh, but it smells, and it creates, interest for bugs, for example. So then the contractors or manufacturers may then spray that and treat it with, again, harmful and petrochemical kind of synthetic sprays and applicants, and that again completely defeats the object. So it's making sure that everyone in that chain is aware of the process, really.
Man, it just sounds like a lot. On a deeper level, how do you think your work in sustainable building reflects your core values and life's philosophy?
Yeah, again, that's a great question, really. And I think if I can do my bit to, I suppose, personally, from just a single human perspective, if I can do my bit to make sure that we are slowing down the destruction of the planet, and kind of, it's never necessarily going to be reversed, unfortunately, but if I can do that, do a bit to stop it prolonging the inevitable, I think that would be good enough from a personal level. But from a corporate and professional level, obviously I'm lucky enough now to have various organizations and various faces and big exposure and be doing things like this, for example, and be able to hopefully influence and make people think ethically about what they're doing. So rather than just from a single person perspective, I would like to be able to, impact more groups of people, rather than just the ones, I physically speak to.
It sounds like while you're on this planet, Jason, you're going to do whatever it takes to help as much within your areas of expertise and impact as many groups of people as possible. And this is your passion. And I love that. I can relate to that. That's been me no matter where I'm at in my focus. So I appreciate that too, that there's people like you in this world. And it's cool because I believe this podcast is going to be really incredible, because I'm sure most of my listeners never even heard half the things you're talking about, and it's opening their eyes. And as soon as you hear that it's what's possible and then belief, a lot of great things can happen. So thank you for that. So backtrack, you said you read my book. I didn't know that. And I appreciate that. And this isn't about me, but this is about you. You said there were some similarities. Do you mind sharing, especially how you may see maybe those similarities, if there is? If not, no big deal, but maybe some of those similarities and how they positively or negatively affected your life, or any share on that?
Yeah, absolutely. No, fantastic. So I think the main one that came across to me was I think the expression you used was the devil doing push-ups in the parking lot. And I think that kind of stuck in my mind quite a lot. And I think, it's always around the corner. You've always got resistance. You'll always have some way that some bad energy or negative energy can try and come into your life and almost try and defeat you, try and defeat that kind of cause in you, that fire in you. And it's always being aware and prepared and almost kind of conditioning your soul rather than just physically to be able to not just overcome, but endure those kind of challenges and resistance, because there are always going to be people, whether it's trying to discredit you, because obviously me kind of shouting about this stuff, there's going to be an awful lot of upset people, and the more people listen, the more upset they're going to be. So their first point would be, oh, well, let's discredit him. Let's try and make people not believe what he's saying. And it's kind of making sure that you're not being influenced, not being defeated by those things. And it's that, I think it's that kind of description and what you used was very powerful. And I think that's actually touched me myself. And I think that will kind of continue to, I suppose, almost empower me going forward with my own decisions.
Well, that's good to hear. Yeah, I mean, for those that have not read my book, why haven't you? No, but for those that haven't read it, that's in the beginning, and it was an analogy that came to me. For example, just like he touched on resistance, and I'm a fitness guy. I mean, I'm a coach trainer. I've been doing this for almost 20 years in health and wellness, and no matter how good life feels or is getting or flowing, we always have to remember. And I threw a Bible verse in there. No matter your beliefs, that's just what's guided me, and it's knowing that there's dark forces, or there's always something out there, even like a negative comment on a post that could throw you sideways and distract you from the progress you're making. And it's just like somebody you don't even know. So just remember that those things are always going to be there. When I was writing that book, I had a book coach too, and he actually made me go to his book on Amazon and look at his reviews. He's got like 4.8 out of 5, but he's got tons. He's a big, well-known author. He's a friend of mine. And he said, I want you to look at all my bad reviews. And he is like, because you're going to get those too. And you can't let your bad reviews guide your good. Look at, I got 4.8. Some of those people aren't even reading your book. There's going to be that. There's going to be the devil. There's going to be stuff. So, use that as motivation, that there's always going to be those things, and use it as motivation. So yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, because I needed that reminder today, actually. So thanks for bringing up my own book. That is a
pleasure.
Yeah. I mean, I wrote my book as if it could help one person, and it became probably the most therapeutic thing I ever did. And it's almost been a guidebook for a lot of people. And it's even been my own, I refer back to it because, I didn't realize I wrote it for myself sometimes too. So, throughout your journey, you obviously it's probably been some adversity. We've talked about that. Is there anything particular vulnerable in your career? And if so, how did that moment lead to growth or shift in your approach? So vulnerability in your career.
Absolutely. I mean, I think the way that I suppose the way I'm wired is the best way of describing it. I don't really conform with what you would class as kind of if you're doing grades, or you're doing kind of I suppose tick box point systems. It never really works with the way that I tend to think things through in my kind of thought process. So if from very early on, even from kind of before being a qualified surveyor, going through kind of, my degree, my master's degree, and then even kind of, it's only really been my PhD when it kind of has fit my brain kind of, I suppose, pattern, because it's very, very much influenced on your personal kind of beliefs and behavior. But when you're looking at strict academia, I just don't fit in those boxes. And unfortunately, at the time, obviously, you don't have almost any kind of big wins. You don't have any kind of awards. You don't have any, final finished projects that people can go, yeah, this is working, or companies that are actually being able to do anything positive. So you don't have any of those big wins or those goals. So yeah, that was very vulnerable in my early stages, because obviously everyone has self-doubt. And then then it comes into almost imposter syndrome, where you get past that, and then all of a sudden you're talking to people that are massive influencers that have been doing this for, before you were born, and and you just think, wow, do I belong here? Am I good enough for this? It's been a continual struggle, I think, and especially the more success that I achieve, the more resistance in certain fields and industry people, because of what we've been speaking about as well. And you just have to kind of adapt to that endurance and adapt that kind of almost as a soul conditioning from that vulnerability to be like, it's okay, and actually I've now got to a point where I even see that as an indicator I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. The more people that are resisting, the more people that are throwing, I suppose, dirt in my eyes, it is a metaphor, the more clearly I'm having an impact in the right places. So, I think I've hopefully managed to turn almost my vulnerabilities into like an indication of strength and kind of progress.
Yeah. And I mean, that was the premise of my book, Purpose Through Pain, finding your challenges, your pain, whether it be an actual thing or something like you mentioned, and looking at the growth potentiality in it. I got a second book coming out, the beginning of next year. It goes a little bit deeper into that. It's actually more about, finding joy, and it's way past purpose, but, using these as tools, and always finding the joy within the storms and the challenges of our life. And we need to, and you talked on that. So, there's tools that I use that I mentioned, but what through your journey have you used to balance those demands of being an entrepreneur, a family man, your life, like with your own mental and emotional well-being? What are some of the things?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think my key, I suppose my epicenter to all of my segments of my life is fitness, actually. Since a very young age, 12 really, I've been very much into sort of martial arts and then fitness, running and things like that. And that's always been an influence through my life, and going through my kind of younger adolescent years and then going into my 30s. And it's kind of, it's always allowed me to kind of almost take a step back, disconnect from everything else, and then just kind of get rid of those toxins, that toxic stresses, anxieties, doubts through kind of physical training. And then it allows you then to have perspective. I think that's really important, because the last year of my life, unfortunately, I've had some really nasty, life-threatening infections and spinal issues and things like that, all coming from, I suppose, misbalance of stress and lowering kind of my spiritual energy levels, which has really caused issues with me. So for that year, I didn't have that. I didn't have that epicenter of fitness. I wasn't physically able to do anything. So I still had all those stresses, still had all those problems, all those things to balance, but I had no reset button. And it was very difficult, because then things started, small things, that could be issues or not even really necessarily big problems. They may have taken 10 minutes to sort, but because I had no reset, they may as well have been mountains. They could have been huge issues, and they were just kind of almost still weighing down on me to a point where it was very hard to just keep kind of trudging through mud. And luckily, kind of seeing the difference in that now, I've been cleared to kind of gradually start my progression back to health. Even the small things, even 10 minutes a day, just allows you to clear your mind enough to be able to say, wow, this is powerful stuff. This is stuff that you really need to take seriously. And also, it's so easy to give reason to sacrifice that time, especially if you're busy or you've got a deadline coming up about something and you go, oh, well, I'll just miss that session today. I'll just miss that wellbeing session or that meditation session or yoga session. And then it doesn't just become one. It doesn't stop at one. That's kind of the starting point. And then it's like, oh, wow, I managed to get so much more done because I didn't do that. I'm going to start sacrificing it more. And it's a snowball effect. And before you know it, you're in a negative spin. So it's like, really important just to make sure that no matter how busy things are, tough things are, make sure you always have that time. It could just be a walk, it could be a cycle, it doesn't have to be a full-blown gym session, but something to put yourself back in that kind of balance.
Yeah, just like 10 minutes, like you said. I call them movement snacks. I talk about them, just something. And I'm glad you shared some vulnerability there, because I always believe it's amazing how movement, something as simple as movement in our life, or not in our life, can have such a massive impact. And you had the self-awareness to recognize that because you had it and then you didn't. And now you're like, I need this. And you realize how, and then even just, how you start to connect. And it sounds like you're just doing everything, you're trying to help the community. You realize you have to help yourself so you can help the community. And this is what, it's simple, but it's not easy. And that's why we need more people like you in this world. So with that, how do you recharge or recalibrate when faced with setbacks? You shared a little bit with meditation and movement. Are there any other practices or routines that help to maintain your focus and resilience in these times?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I love kind of the books of the Power of Now, and there's things that are very kind of they help me through a lot of tough times. And the simplistic kind of meanings of those is looking at the presence of right now. It may seem really simple, but if you kind of see yourself as I suppose a computer, your mind as a processor, if you're clogging it up with what you're worrying about what you've done, you're worrying about what's in the future, even in 10 minutes time, and you're panicking about scenarios that haven't even happened yet, and you're creating fears and anxiety around fictitious things that haven't even happened, and they may never happen. So just being, even down to, it's always kind of like meditation again, but not necessarily in the common form, just sitting and, I don't know, listening to the trees, and just that's it. You just focus on that. And then you start kind of letting in the positives again, what's good in your life at that moment, your health, is your family well, what great things, I'm not talking about academia or materialistic things or even professional things, but just about you in that moment. What have you got to be grateful for? And then, that then kind of, for me, it almost builds like the fire back up. It stokes the fire back up, and then it allows me then to deal with my problems in a much more linear and kind of almost, I suppose, realistic fashion, really.
They just brought up something that I'm going to try to do with my family, and it's I forget the name of it, and even if I knew it, I'd probably butcher it, but it's a Japanese technique, and it's a way to shift your life to genuine appreciation, even if it usually is, but say it's not. Something we're going to try before Thanksgiving, even though this is going to air after Thanksgiving, but this could be done anytime, is ask yourself with your family or loved ones, or maybe even just yourself, but then share later 3 questions, which goes into, well, the first question is, what have I received? So like from someone or something. What have I given? And the third one I think is really powerful. What troubles or difficulties have I caused for others? Right? So just some good self-reflection. So we're going to be wrapping up here soon. I got a few more questions though. Obviously the Strive 365, and you've talked a lot. So define it. What does striving mean to you in the context of both your personal life and your mission for sustainable living?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, personal life is, don't make excuses for why you're not doing things. Don't put mental blocks in your way. You're the only person that kind of put those limitations in. And essentially, the terminology "freedom is power" is incredibly kind of powerful to me personally, because it allows me to kind of remember that actually the freedom of your mind is the most powerful incentive and control you have to be able to go out and achieve what you want to achieve in your personal life, whether that's have a family, get married, or go and climb Mount Everest. Everyone has their own missions that they want to achieve before they die, and you're the only person that's standing in your way. So I always strive to make sure that is something that I do on a daily basis. If I start kind of putting obstacles in the way, my subconscious goes, "Oh, you shouldn't do that." I'm consciously then on it. It's a red flag. Why is that happening? And then moving it and moving myself forward. So I would love to be able to just teach my children that, and be able to kind of allow them to develop their own kind of version of that for themselves. So I think personally, that's definitely the one. And sustainability wise, and again, it's about persistence. It's about, unfortunately, being the uncomfortable conversation, the uncomfortable presence of something that people do not want to address or do not know how to address. And, one voice can be heard by everyone, by millions, because of obviously technology, but also the movement of what the cause of that is. So I would always like to, time is very limited, and I would like to make sure every moment that I'm speaking to people or doing something towards sustainability, I would like to be able to say that actually what I'm saying is hopefully going to contribute to that fire towards that positive movement, to be able to make a bigger change than what I can do.
Yeah. I love all that. You said something, and I use the words, the voices of the stories we tell ourselves, where our subconscious mind and the things that we're going. I've heard some extreme stories I thought about sharing on here, but I won't. But we could go down such a deep rabbit hole, especially if we don't stop it. So my encouragement, if you have a story that's negative or untrue, or it doesn't align with your purpose, isn't kind, isn't motivational or inspiring, then stop it. And it could be meditation, it could be prayer work, it could just, you need to get that out because it will evolve if you don't. So that's my encouragement. If you really want to know some stories, I could share some stories. There's a guy, no, I won't share this too far, but he had a story and it got so far 6 months because he didn't do anything about it and almost caused some very horrible things in his entire life. And then he basically meditated and prayed it away and it was gone. So just know that, do your thing. So for anyone listening who's navigating their own paths through difficult times, any more advice or insights or that you'd love to offer based off of your experiences or the things that you're doing?
I mean, it sounds incredibly, I suppose, corny, but just truly believe in yourself. If you think that what your beliefs are and what your contribution to put forward to whatever it is you care about, don't listen to the negativity. Just listen to constructive criticism in yourself, and you will achieve what you want to achieve out of your life and your career. So that's what I probably would say to people. And I would be inputting what you've already said, really, but it'd just be reiterating an already well-valid point. Is well-being is everything, and meditation or prayer or any kind of way that you feel you need to be able to reset or release that toxin or stress or whatever it may be. Just find what works for you and make sure you hold on to it and do not sacrifice it for anything.
If you're having trouble, maybe it's your house and you need to call this guy right here. So yeah, you never know.
There we go. Absolutely.
And I want to ask this to you. I've asked it before, but I don't ask it with everybody. But you seem like a dreamer, especially a dreamer who wants to do good things in this world. So this came essentially from, I have 2 daughters, but my youngest, she's 8, but she's been fascinated and loves unicorns. And I would say, yeah, a lot of girls do, but this girl really she knows they don't exist, but is going to find a way to make them exist. And I'm not going to stop that, So what Absolutely. For you is do you have one? If not, you don't have to answer this. Or if you had one big unicorn wish for your career, your life, or for this world while you're here, or maybe right after when you're gone, in a legacy of sorts, if you just had this unicorn dream, unicorn size wish, what would it be?
That's a big one, really.
I know, right? You can sit on it for a second.
Wow. I think... I mean, there's so many things. I think if the unicorn wish kind of, a genie came up and said, what would your one wish be? There's, I suppose, getting rid of greed in life. I think that would be one of the things, because I think greed is fundamentally the root cause of a lot of issues. Whether that's, world hunger, whether that's, I suppose, plagues and medical withdrawals of medication and all the, sustainability issues, everything. There's a lot of things come down to greed. So, yeah, it will be very interesting if you could kind of just completely eradicate that.
That's a good one, man. I won't ask you how you would do that. That's a whole other episode probably, but
I have no idea.
No, I'm sure. Yeah, but that's a good one. And I loved your follow up on it. So anything else you'd like to share, including ways people can contact you, social media channels, or anything else that maybe we left off that you'd want to be like, hey, I want to make sure that we say this before we get off here.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, This is a big, like you say, home health and your general environment. If you're stuck or you just do not know where to go, the home health expert or homehealthexpert.com.uk or wherever you are in the world is always here. The door's always open and it is completely free. And there is nothing on there that cannot be input. If you have any issues at all, please contact us and I will do my best to answer it.
Awesome, man. Well, I appreciate having you on here. I can relate to a lot of things you talked about. I grew up with childhood asthma, for example, and I eradicated it through my own means. But I think what you're doing, I know what you're doing is great, and hopefully it expands, and I'm sure it will, into the rest of the world. That people, like you said, start putting people first over profit and realize they will see the profit if they just really focus on taking care of everyone and not striving for perfection is what I heard. And you doing everything you can while you're here and just realizing how connected we are as a world, as a community, especially more than ever. And we need to begin to even be more connected. So thank you so much, Jason Ratcliffe, for joining me on Strive 365. And for the listeners, thank you for listening in on this. And this is completely listener supported. So do your part because it might just save or even help a life or encourage somebody today. So like, share, comment, subscribe. We are on all channels, including YouTube, Spotify, iTunes, all of it. Google. We are everywhere for your listening pleasure. And I know you're busy, but thank you for listening. And like I said, one more reminder, share it with somebody you think might benefit or find value in it. Take care.